Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This proclamation news and governance. It's with a peasant, prodigious Professor Johnson at Proclamation News and Governance. The last Monday of the month in September. It's very beneficial to subscribe to Proclamation News and Governance. Anyway, which way? Politics, UK politics, bona fide conservatism. Our radio cast is also a sponsored by Conservative now. We are a Conservative member. We had to be part of the fleet, but like I say, I'm not going to, but still be too biased for listeners. I want more people to interact. That we can all shape up Britain, whichever formation your politics is. If you think there's a sporadic knife crime and your community needs to be supported, more things to do in your community for children. See what we can do. Let's work it together. Let's work it together. Absolutely. COVID U-turn. COVID U-turn. COVID U-turn. COVID U-turn over post-curfew alcohol sales in Parliament. Nigel Farage's going to be well upset. COVID U-turn over post-curfew on alcohol sales in Parliament. COVID U-turn. House Parliament has said none of its bars will serve alcohol after 10 p.m. After it emerged, it was not subject to England's COVID-19 curfew. Bars and restaurants in the Palace, Westminster, are not bound by the early closing time because of exemptions. For workplaces, canteens in the rules, while most are shut anyway. MPs said it was a ridiculous situation. A parliamentary spokesman confirmed alcohol will not be sold after 10 p.m. anywhere on a parliamentary estate, but food will still be available in the Palace of Westminster after 10 p.m. when Parliament is sitting. Parliamentary authorities said catering facilities would remain open, in line with the government's industry guidance, to serve food for those still working and to support social distancing. Since the 24th September, all pubs, bars, restaurants and other hospitality venues in England selling food and drink have been required to close at 10 BST, except for takeaways, to help curb the spread of coronavirus. A small number of venues are exempt from the rules, including canteens, hospitals, prisons, army bases and homeless shelters. Under the rules, workplace canteens can also stay open if it is deemed there is no practical alternative for staff at that workplace to obtain food. There's news that Parliament was not legally bound by the same rules as hospitality businesses across England. First reported by the Times, Red Fox was met by criticism by MPs. Labour Wes Streeting said the situation had to change immediately, while Health Minister Helen Whately said the apparent anomaly was wrong. But Conservative MP Tim Loughton pointed out that most of the bars have been shut since the outbreak since March, tweeting, "We have more restrictions than the public at large." There are multiple bars, restaurants in the Palace, Westminster, which is situated in central London, for the use of MPs, peers, staff and or other pass holders. These are traditionally stayed open late to accommodate evening parliamentary sittings. I think they need to stay at the pub. Probably do them a lot better if they stay at the pub. Looking at the Brexit trade talks. Brexit trade talks. Deal can, deal can and must be made, says CBI boss. Sort of waiting for me, but the deal to be signed and delivered. Post the post-Brexit trade deal can and must be made. The organisation representing British businesses has said ahead of the further UK EU trade talks on Monday. Dame Caroline Fairbairn, the boss of the Confederation of the British Industry, said it was time for the spirit to compromise to shine through. The Brexit transition period in which the UK has kept to the EU trading it ends on the 31st of December. UK and EU are not yet to agree a deal. that will govern their future trade. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said a trade agreement with the EU must be done by 15th October if it is going to be ready for the start of 2021. But despite this, talks have run into problems. There are key points of disagreement, including, for example, on fishing. The next official round of talks, ninth since March, begins on 28 September. CBI has carried out a survey of 648 companies, which found only 4% said they would prefer no deal to be agreed on a trade, and half of the firms said the impact of dealing with the coronavirus had negatively affected the preparations for next year when the transition period ends. So we're going to be a bit more to know what we're going to do in the 14th of October. If we don't, EU don't sign a trade agreement, then we're not going with the EU. Next week, Brexit talks enter the 11th hour, said Dame Caroline. Now must be the time for political leadership and the spirit of compromise to shine through on both sides. The deal can be and must be made. Business face a hat-trick of unprecedented challenges, rebuilding from the first wave of the COVID-19, dealing with the residents of the virus, and preparing for the significant changes to the UK's trading relationship with the EU. She added that a good deal will provide the strongest possible foundation as countries build back from the pandemic. It would keep UK firms competitive by minimising red tape and extra costs, freeing much needed time and resource to overcome difficult times ahead. According to the BBC's Europe editor, Katja Adler, one EU diplomat said the two sides were 90%. They're on agreeing technical issues. The diplomat said the remaining 10% is political, and if that can't be solved, then the 90% is relevant. Any trade agreement we aim to eliminate tariffs and reduce other trade barriers. It will also aim to cover both goods and services. If negotiators fail to reach a deal, the UK faces a prospect of trading with the EU under the basic rules set by the World Trading Organisation. In the UK, to trade under WTO rules, tariffs will be applied to most goods which UK business send to the EU. This would make the UK more expensive and harder to sell in Europe. The UK could also do this to EU goods if it chooses to. Thank you all for coming through, guys. We'd appreciate the support. It's only a little short show. I've got my little cousin staying over, so yeah, I'm gonna do a little short show. We're gonna look at a bit of US politics. Mr. President, what is he up to? I think Joe Biden really is going to be taking his job very soon. Donald Trump pays $750 in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017. From the New York Times, it said Donald Trump paid just $750 which is £480 in federal income tax both in 2016, the year he ran for the US presidency, and in his first year in the White House. The New York Times says. Newspaper, which says it obtained tax records from Mr. Trump and his companies over 2 decades, also says that they paid no income taxes at all in the 10 of the previous 15 years. The record reveals chronic losses and years of tax avoidance, it says. Mr. Trump called it a report. The report of fake news. Actually, I paid tax. And all, you can see that as soon as my tax returns, it's under audit. It's been under audit for a long time. He told the reporters after the story was published on Sunday. The IRS Internal Revenue Service does not treat me very well. They treat me very bad, he said. Mr. Trump has faced legal challenges for refusing to share documents concerning his fortune and businesses. He said is the first president since the 1970s not to make his tax returns public. No, this is not required by law. The Times said the information scrutinised in its report was provided by sources with legal access to it. The report came just days before Mr. Trump's provided presidential debate with Democratic rival, Joe Biden, and weeks before the 3rd of November election. What are the key claims, he says? The Times said it reviewed tax returns related to President Trump and companies owned by Trump's organization back to 1990s, as well as his personal returns for 2016 and 2017. It said the president paid $750 in income taxes in both 2016 and 17, while he paid no income taxes at all in the 10 previous 15 years. Hi there, Paya. Largely because he reported losing much more money than he made. Mr. President Trump. Before becoming president, Mr. Trump was known as a celebrity businessman and property thanks, Don. Thanks, Phil. A businessman, property module, building an image of a hugely successful self-made billionaire, which could be dented by the latest revelations. Observers say, but the newspaper says his reports to the IRS portray a businessman who takes in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, yet racks up the chronic loss that he aggressively employs to avoid paying taxes. In an annual financial disclosure that he required to make as president, President Trump said he made at least 434.9 million in 2018. The newspaper disputes this, alleging that his tax returns show the president had instead gone into the red with 47.4 million in losses. The Trump Organization joined the president in denying the allegations. In the report, the company's chief legal officer, Alan Garton, told the Times that most, if not all, of the facts appear to be inaccurate. What are your thoughts on Trump? Over the past decade, President Trump has paid tens of millions of dollars in personal taxes to the federal government, including paying millions in personal taxes since announcing his candidacy in 2015, he said. By using them personal taxes, New York Times points out, Mr. Garton appears to be conflating other federal taxes paid by Mr. Trump, such as Social Security, Medicare and taxes for people who work in his household, with federal income tax. What else does the report say? The newspaper also claims that most of Mr. Trump's biggest businesses, such as his golf course and hotels, report losing millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, year after year. The equation is a key element of the alchemy of Mr. Trump's finances, using the proceeds of his celebrity to purchase and prop up risky business. In welding their losses to avoid taxes, it says, it adds the president is personally responsible for more than 300 million in loans, which will come due in the next 4 years. The newspaper also alleges that President Trump's business have received money from the lobbyists, foreign officials, and others seeking face time, access, or favour from the president. The Times says it used the tax records to find out how much income the president made from the companies overseas, allowing that he made 73 million in revenue from abroad in the first 2 years at the White House. 73 million. Much of that came into his golf course and in Ireland and Scotland, but the Times says the Trump Organization also received money from being licensed deals in countries with authoritarian leaning leaders of thorny geopolitics. The Times alleges that license deals netted 3 million from the Philippines, 2.3 million in India, and 1 million from Turkey. The newspaper claims that President Trump made 427.4 million in total up until 2018 in revenues from the Apprentice of US series, as well as from branding deals from the organizations paid to use his name. It also made 176.5 million in the profit by investing in 2 buildings, it is alleged. However, the Times alleges that the president paid almost no taxes on these sizable earnings because he reported that the business that he owns and runs made significant losses. The Times also alleges that Mr. Trump reduced his taxable income by paying consultant fees in Ivanka Trump, his daughter and senior advisor. In Financial Disclosure Bill in 2017, she reported to receiving $746,622 from a consulting company she owned. Consulting fees of exactly the same amount were claimed as tax deduction by Trump's organisation for hotel projects. The Times has said Mr. Trump is also said to have written off more than $70,000 in dollars in hairstyling costs as business expenses during his time on The Apprentice. The newspaper also claims that Trump has been making use of a tax code that enables business owners to carry forward leftover losses to reduce taxes in future years. For example, the newspaper says that President Trump's largest golf resort, Trump National Thrill near Miami, has made 162.3 million losses since he bought it in 2012. Similarly, his two golf courses in Scotland and one in Ireland have reported a combined 63.6 million losses, it is alleged. The tax law and policy analyst Steve Rosenthal, who previously worked with the Times, looked into Mr. Trump's finances, said the story goes to the heart of Trump's image as a successful businessman. You cannot generate the losses Trump has generated without failing spectacularly. How he continues to generate losses and continues to operate suggests he's continued to borrow money to keep operations afloat, he told the BBC World Service. But how much, if any, damage will this do to the president is up for debate, says the BBC North America edit John Sovell. This time 4 years ago, when Hillary Clinton upbraided him over the little tax he paid, Mr. Trump replied, "That makes me smart." A lot of his supporters applauded, our editor points out. What has the reaction been? Mr. Trump's political opponents condemned his reported tax arrangements. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the most powerful Democrat in Washington, said the report showed Mr. Trump had taken extraordinary measures to game the tax code and avoid paying his fair share of taxes. Talking on Twitter, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer asked Americans to raise their hands if they paid more than federal income tax than Mr. Trump. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has not commented so far. But his campaign, his team highlights on Twitter that teachers, firefighters and nurses all paid much more than $750 in tax. There's been a road closed on the motorway, guys. So think safety first. Do not enter your vehicle under sleep deprivation or alcoholism or narcotics. Water coolant tank, just make sure they're topped up to maximum level. Make sure your tyres have sufficient PSI limits and your tyres are not bowled before driving. Making sure all passengers on board have their seatbelts adapters adjacent to the car seat and babies on board have their seatbelts adapted adjacent to the car seat. Look out for police road safety signs. Look out for road signs. Look out for motorcyclists overtaking. When you overtake yourself, look into the centre and wing mirror before acting into safe, sufficient directional choice. M5 closed in both directions due to police accident in Devon. M5 closed in both directions following a police incident in Devon. The motorway is shut down in Clumpton and Wellington, Somerset. Police are held in person with concerns for their welfare. A Devon and police spokesman said police were called at 12:25 today at the M25 at Clumpton following a concern the welfare of a person in northbound carriageway. The road has been closed in both directions. The road has been closed in both directions between junction 26 27 to allow air ambulance to land and emergency service to access the scene. Drivers are not to avoid the area's possible alternative routes. Ladies Gentlemen, that is it for Proclamation News and Gavin. It's a short one. I've got my little cousin staying, so I want to say God bless, take care, have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoy the show. Speak soon. Say hi, friends. Yep, say hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
We have to go now. We have to go now, friends. Yeah, okay.